At 0614 local time, over the pine forest of Leningrad Oblast, a Ukrainian Lyutyi drone raced low through the morning haze. It had launched 1,000 kilometers away hours ago, and a loose wave of others trailed somewhere behind it. Unknown to the swarm, it had just crossed into the densest electronic warfare bubble in Western Russia, and every GPS satellite it listened to was now feeding it lies, walking its sense of position somewhere it had never been. Its navigation said it was drifting out over open water, and by every rule the Russians wrote, it should already be sitting in a field nose down and dumb. It wasn't. Inside the lead drone's navigation computer, the position fix jumped, then it smeared, then it walked sideways toward the Gulf of Finland, open water the drone had never seen and was never meant to. The autopilot bit on it, nudging the nose toward a place that didn't exist, ready to fly the machine into the sea on the strength of a single lie. On most days, that's the whole story. The drone goes swimming and nobody ever hears the splash. The drone held its heading anyway. The nudge came and it didn't take it. Whatever was feeding it those coordinates hadn't figured out it wasn't listening. Here's what was happening to it. That hijacked fix is GPS spoofing, and you're watching it work in real time. Real satellites sit 20,000 kilometers up, and their signal lands about as strong as a car headlight seen from across an ocean. A spoofer on the ground doesn't bother being clever. It just shouts louder, flooding the air with fake satellite signals strong enough to drown out the real ones. A receiver built to trust the loudest clear voice swallows the lie whole, and a drone that believes it flies itself straight into the sea. A good spoofer can shove its position off by 50 meters or hundreds, or invent a spot it isn't anywhere near and convince the autopilot to fly there. Picture someone swapping every street sign in a city while you drive. Your engine works fine, your steering works fine, but every turn you make is based on signs that are lying to your face. 40 kilometers back, a Russian electronic warfare operator watched his screen. He had the easy calm of a man who'd done this 100 times. He'd put dozens of these things into the dirt without firing a shot. No missile off the rail, no gun barrel glowing, no noise at all. Just a lie whispered into a cheap receiver. It rode that lie until the drone flew itself somewhere stupid and ran out of sky over an empty field. The best intercept, the way he saw it, was one where nothing exploded. He leaned back, the chair creaking under him, coffee gone cold at his elbow, and marked the contact gone. Another easy one, on a morning that was full of them. Easiest job in the Russian military, like getting paid to change the Wi-Fi password on your neighbor's router. In Leningrad Oblast, someone had built a $10 million machine specifically to stop a drone that cost about 200 grand. A Manhattan parking spot with wings. The parking spot was winning. The lead drone had stopped trusting its GPS the second the numbers stopped making sense. The spoofer screen would never show him that. The drone's computer had been running two navigation systems side by side the whole way in, comparing their stories, and the two had just started to disagree. So the computer chose. It threw the satellite fix out, ignored the phantom pulling it toward the water, dropped its nose toward the treetops, and went to check its work against the real ground below. That backup is inertial navigation, gyros and accelerometers that feel every turn and gust and tally it all up, asking the outside world for nothing. It's the oldest trick in navigation. You're counting your own steps down a pitch-black hallway, sure of where the kitchen is because you memorized the house. Nobody can jam it. There's nothing to jam. Its one weakness is drift. Over 1,000 kilometers, those tiny inertial errors stack into real distance, and the drone slowly loses track of exactly where it is. That drift is exactly why it had to drop low and start reading the ground. And that one move shaped everything that came next. Reading terrain meant flying down in the weeds. It fixed the navigation problem clean, but it also dragged the drone out of the high, easy air where it sipped fuel. Down here, the engine drank harder. The fuel margin it carried all the way from Ukraine started to shrink, and down low was exactly where every short-range air defense around that port was waiting. It had beat the lie by getting close to the ground. The trouble is what lived down there. If that outer ring held, the swarm never reached the coast and the whole raid ended at the fence. A radar on the port's outer ring caught a contact at 6 kilometers and locked, and a missile screamed off a perimeter rail and climbed in a heartbeat. It tore a drone 2 slots over from the lead into a slow cloud of fiberglass scraps, drifting down across the rail yard. What he was driving is a Pancer S1. radar, missiles, and twin 30mm autocannons welded onto a single truck. On paper, it eats drones for breakfast. The Pancer S1 is Russia's point defense workhorse, 12 ready missiles per vehicle, autocannons that throw 5,000 rounds a minute, and interceptors that chase a target out to 20 kilometers, roughly midtown to JFK, at better than 3 times the speed of sound. The world's most expensive drone swatter, right up until the rails run dry. This wasn't paper. Ukraine spent 2 years blowing these things up, and about half of what Russia started the war with is scrap now, a scorch mark on somebody's satellite photo. The factories can't keep up, a handful a month against a fleet getting chewed apart. So the crews who still have a working one ration their missiles like a man counting the last bullets in a siege. You don't waste one. You can't. The autocannons fire dumb steel rounds. No computer telling the shell to pop into a shrapnel cloud next to something small. A near miss scores nothing. The whole rig is a TV remote with 3 working buttons, taped to a second remote that only changes the channel if you mash it right against the screen. Out on the perimeter, the Panzer commander stared at his scope and ran the math nobody on his crew wanted to say out loud. More contacts crawling across it than he had ready missiles to throw. He could see the gap, plain as a bill he couldn't pay. Every shot shredded a real drone. His crew worked fast and clean, exactly the way they'd trained, and none of it mattered. The lead drone out in front of the first wave faced the worst call of its run, because being lead meant being seen first and shot at first. The worst seat in the house. And the safe move was obvious. Slide back into the pack, let the others soak up the attention, live easier. But sliding back cost something too, because falling behind meant arriving late. The early waves would already have the farm burning, the smoke climbing, the cameras moving on. The whole reason this drone existed was to be early, so it held its slot. It took its first shot risk and stayed at the tip of the spear. What kept it alive in that spot wasn't armor or speed, it was arithmetic. The commander fired again. Another drone burst over the rail yard, and then 2 more slid past the rim of his coverage untouched, droning on toward the coast while he was still tracking the first. The rack was emptying faster than the sky was. Look at that wave spreading across his radar. Because this is saturation warfare, it's why cheap drones beat expensive defenses in the first place. A Panzer can really only track and shoot one thing at a time, and it's only got so many missiles on the rails. Salt the swarm with decoys, cheap empty shells that light up a radar scope exactly like the real thing. And the gunner can't tell the lethal one from the junk until it's far too late. Every missile burned on a maybe decoy is one that won't be there when the real one finally shows. Think of one bouncer at a door with a dozen people rushing him. He grabs a few, the rest walk past, and the drone he's chasing runs about $200,000. His launcher holds 12 missiles. Ukraine builds the drones by the hundreds. He runs out of missiles long before Ukraine runs out of drones. That's the first branch of why the wall failed. Here's the second. Some of the systems that should have been guarding this port weren't there at all. They'd been airlifted onto rooftops 400 miles away in Moscow because the brass got jumpy about their own skyline and yanked the hardware home to sit on apartment buildings, like pulling the smoke detectors out of the kitchen to mount them in the living room, then acting shocked when dinner catches fire. A wall is only as thick as the bricks still standing in it. A lot of this one was missing. So the math broke the way the commander knew it would. He emptied his ready rack into the wave, dropped the drones he could, and bought himself a reload gap. Those long, ugly seconds while the launcher hauls fresh missiles up onto the rails and the sky goes wide open. The lead drone rode straight through the gap and came out alive. One reason, it stayed first, and the swarm behind it ate the shots meant for everyone. It bought its way through by leading from the front. Then it heard the rotors. On the inner perimeter, a squat turret swiveled hard and ripped a stream of tracers into the sky. A low-flying drone in the wave came apart in a shower of sparks barely a kilometer off the perimeter wire. That was the ZAC-30 Citadel, a boxy, automated 30mm gun module Russia only started bolting on defense lines this year. The Citadel is Russia's answer to Germany's Skynex, a radar and camera turret that fires programmable airburst shells, rounds it tells to burst into a shrapnel cloud right next to a drone. No direct hit required, out to about a mile. A robot machine gun nest with a brain, basically. And here's what it really tells you. Russia is bolting guns to fences because it already lost this fight at the missile layer. The Panzer seen a minute ago was a strong defense failing. It was a broke one improvising. They rushed it into service for one blunt reason. The Panzer couldn't cover the volume anymore, so somebody decided a robot gun was better than nothing. Think of it as a Ring doorbell camera that shoots back. It sees you, a guy pulls a trigger from somewhere safe, and inside a click and a half, it'll chew a drone to pieces. The lead drone tested just how good that better version was. The lead drone never came close enough to find out. It banked wide and slid clear of the gun's reach, and that one turn exposed the flaw. A gun module that only reaches 1.5 kilometers can't touch a drone smart enough to route past it. Going the long way wasn't free. Routing wide added distance, and staying low to stay hidden added drag on a drone that had already flown more than 1,000 kilometers. Every extra mile it flew to dodge the guns came straight out of the reserve it had hoarded since the border. By the time it cleared the bubble and swung back toward the water, it had committed to something it couldn't undo. One pass, no fuel to come around again, and none to climb and loiter to wait for a cleaner shot. Burn the last of the fuel on a missed pass and the drone never makes the tanker. So whatever happened at that farm happened on the first try or not at all. The guns didn't take the drone down. They took its do-over. And out there, 1,000 kilometers deep, a do-over was the only thing that could have saved it. That mattered more. One cannon burst onto the wing or the warhead, and the drone came apart in the air. 1,000 kilometers of flight wasted in a second. Then, from above and behind, a line of tracers walked through the sky and tore another drone out of the formation. Meet the Ka-52M Alligator, Russia's answer when the ground defenses kept coming up short. It's Russia's most advanced attack helicopter, coaxial rotor design, rated to 300 kilometers per hour, armed with a 30mm 2A42 autocannon and up to 12 air-to-air missiles. Price tag, $16 million per airframe. It was built to destroy NATO armor on the German plane. Today, it was hunting something with the wingspan of a hang glider. A sharp crew can drop several drones in a sortie with nothing but the cannon, and it's the one thing up there fast enough to chase down a leaker. Russia even swears it's feeding those guns fancy new airburst rounds now, shells that pop into shrapnel in midair. Maybe it is, but nobody outside Russia has confirmed those rounds actually working. Here's the catch. The gun camera footage showing the rest of us a low-res picture that glares out wide under the cannon's own muzzle flash and freezes at the worst moments. Hunting one small drone low against broken forest through a sensor like that is like spotting a single moth against a cluttered backyard through a fogged-up phone camera in the glare of noon. And every hour that helicopter, worth more than the whole swarm it's hunting, burns fuel chasing $50,000 drones. Somewhere in Kyiv, an accountant is smiling. Now the lead drone faced the last clean call of its flight, and like every call before it, both options were bad. Climb and a steadier run would hand its camera a beautiful look at the target, while painting its silhouette against open sky for that cannon, or drop into the ground clutter below the helicopter where it would live, but where its camera would judder through a low, fast pass at the very limit of what its little brain could process. It chose, as it always had, to live. High above, the gunner caught one clean and watched it tumble. He swung his sight onto the next contact, the lead, and lost it. His screen glared white and stuttered, and his eyes ached from an hour of hunting small shapes against broken ground. He refused to settle. He was dangerous, and he was good. None of it helped. The one drone that mattered slid underneath him through the noise, and he never saw it. That miss is the whole story of the Ka-52M's weakness. The footage glares, the feed freezes, and the thing it's hunting has the wingspan of a small plane, painted to blend with the sky and flying the nap of the earth. By the time the gunner blinked, his target was already gone, dropping toward the port. The lead drone slipped beneath the helicopter and lined up on the port. 2 minutes to impact, 120 seconds of fuel, altitude, and luck. Low and fast, its camera straining at the edge of its tolerance, and the tank farm ahead was vanishing behind a thickening curtain of its own smoke. The drone dropped toward the tank farm and flew straight into two problems no warhead could solve. The first was a lattice of steel cable strung over the tanks like a spider web. Beyond it churned a wall of black smoke, already boiling off the far end of the farm where an earlier drone had punched a tank open minutes before. That mesh over the tanks isn't camouflage, it's a net, and the drone was committed to flying straight at it. We'll come back to how a steel web ends up strung all over a fuel farm. Right now, the thing was deep into its final 2 minutes, flying the last stretch with no operator, no radio link, no GPS. It wasn't sending or saying a thing the Russians could grab onto. The whole machine was barely the size of a hang glider, cobbled together from hobby plane parts for pennies on the dollar next to a cruise missile. What was flying in it? The Lyutyi, Ukraine's home-built long-range attack drone, a wingspan near 7 meters, a piston engine pulled off a hobby plane, and a 50-kilogram warhead in the nose. It had flown more than 1,000 kilometers to get here, New York to Chicago, on a one-way ticket. It was steering by eye, one camera in the nose, and that eye was running out of things it recognized. Lose the lock now, this close in, and the drone flew blind into a wall of smoke and hit nothing at all. The smoke rolled across the camera's field of view and the picture stopped matching. Where the memory held tiny rows of silver tanks, the lens now showed a churning black column shot through with fire. The software hunted for a landmark it had been promised. It found smoke. The lock broke. For one heartbeat, the most advanced thing on that drone had no idea where it was. Here's what broke. This is machine vision guidance. The drone flies by eye. A camera in the nose watches what it sees against satellite pictures somebody loaded into its head before takeoff and drives itself the rest of the way in. There was nothing for the spoofer to fool because the drone had quit asking the satellites anything at all. Picture a tourist who memorized a photo of the building before leaving the hotel. Scramble every GPS signal in the city, and that tourist still walks to the front door. The catch is simple. The tourist has to recognize the door. Right now, the door this one had memorized was buried in smoke. This was the bill coming due for all of it. 3 ways out, all of them shut. Climb above the smoke and hand itself to the guns. Orbit and wait on fuel it didn't have. Or find the target through the mess and commit. 2 doors nailed shut, 1 barely cracked open. So the computer did the only thing left. It stopped hunting for the whole picture and hunted for hard edges instead. The rim of a single tank breaking through the top of the smoke, the straight line of the pier behind it, anything solid enough to anchor on. It found a tank rim cutting the smoke line. It locked. The range counter kept falling. Down on the fence line, one of those SAC-30 gun modules caught the drone on its sight through a gap in the smoke and opened up, walking 30mm rounds up toward it from behind. The net waited below. The smoke churned ahead and the tracer climbed in from the rear. 3 problems, 1 3-second window. From the far end of the farm, the engine note dropped low enough to rattle the chain link fence, a flat buzzing pressure rolling across the empty yard. The drone overhead had already locked onto the tank rim. The camera held on the rim, the drone steadied, and the nose dropped, threading the gap in the steel web like a needle finding its own eye. Then the warhead punched through and buried itself in the side of a products tank. Look closely at the weapon that went through that tank wall. The warhead steel case is scored on the inside, so when it blows, the metal shatters into a dense storm of fragments instead of one ragged chunk. It's crude and it's mean. Against a thin tank wall full of fuel, that fragment storm rips the steel open and lights the vapor in the same instant, so the blast just has to kick the door. The tank went up. The heat lit the fence line a half-second later, a hard wall of it that you'd feel on your face from a block away. Flames sheeted across the top found the next tank, then the one past that. A fresh black column erupted over the Bolshoi port and punched into the sky beside the one already standing there. 2 pillars now. Then a third somewhere across the harbor, where another drone in the wave had found its own tank. 3 columns of smoke standing over the city, where Russia had promised the world there'd be none. Now take in the whole city. There's the smoke itself, standing tall over the waterfront for everyone in the city to see. And 10 miles inland, lit up and packed with people, sits the reason any of this happened. The St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, Russia's own Davos, the Kremlin's yearly party to tell the world the sanctions never stung. The stage where, on Friday, Vladimir Putin would stand in front of a Saudi delegation and thousands of foreign investors and talk about Russian strength, Russian stability, Russian normalcy. The smoke would tell a different story, a black column on the skyline that no camera in that city could crop out, sitting behind every shot of a speech about how fine everything is. If you enjoyed this video, then see this other video where Ukraine humiliated Russia even worse than this time. Bye for now.